Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux and David Aragona here with the Daily Racing Forum, taking a look at some Derby preps this weekend. We're going to kick things off here, though, at Turfway Park. Now, their late pick 4 is going to get kicked off with the John Battaglia, 3-year-old Colton Geldings in the spotlight, mile and a 16th on the synthetic. And David, if you follow Turfway Park, big fields are the norm. It's the usual, but this is a really big field with a total of 14 entered, the two outside being the A's.
Yeah, an oversubscribed field for this Derby prep, offering 20 qualifying points to the winner of the race. And I think the horse that most people's attention will be trained upon is the number 9 First Resort. He's the only runner in this field that is currently on the Derby watch list that Brad Free and I do, and a horse that attracted a lot of attention at the end of his 2-year-old season for that Kentucky Jockey Club victory. But he, like some others in this race, will be trying the all-weather surface for the first time.
Yeah, it's a big question mark for several horses. And obviously, it doesn't necessarily matter on the first Saturday in May, but it does matter when you want to get Derby points to get your spot in the starting gate. We'll take a look here at the time form U.S. pace projection for this mile and a 16th event. And a fast pace is projected. It's a little interesting to see here. You see Spirit Rags, fresh off the maiden score, has been forward really throughout his career, but especially in those most recent performances. And then the 10 towards the outside coming in hot. But I thought it was interesting to see the LP flag, the late pace flag, attached to the 12 in here. Maximum Promise, who closes, but also could be forward as well.
Yeah, it is kind of funny to see the late pace flag attached to a horse that is shown so close to the front of the pace. He is a horse, as you said, who has used different running styles in his career and has made big runs from the back of the pack. We'll see what they decide to do from such a wide post position here. But it does feel like there's a decent amount of speed in this race. The number 2, Shan, is a horse that could be a little more forward than the pace projector shows him, because kind of averaging his last few races, he's come from way back and gone to the lead a few times, depending on how he starts. If he gets out of the gate, he's a horse that I would expect to be vying for the front end.
Let's jump right into the field here with the 1 Spirit Rags. Mentioned this one fresh off the maiden score. It came at the mile distance, and this horse has really stepped it up, David, in those last 3, has made that progression a 72 buyer last time out, but still obviously has some things to prove.
Yeah, the last race was obviously the best that he's produced in his career so far, and he set a pretty fast pace on the front end and was still able to keep on going, but was a 17-1 upsetter that day, so you kind of missed the opportunity to get a price on him against a much weaker field than this, and now he's moving way up in class, so he's got his work cut out for him.
The 2 Shan you mentioned might be able to be forward, a horse that started the career strictly sprinting on the dirt and more recently stretched out to the mile distance. And I think overall in the Leonidas, it was a decent performance considering this horse was trying something new. But now you have to hope that he's going to be able to take a step forward second time around 2 turns.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a horse that wants to be forwardly placed. And the 2 races shown recently, 2 and 3 back, where he was not near the lead, he got off the terrible starts in both of those races, hopped at the start of that Churchill race, and then was just off very badly when he was unprepared for the start of Turfway 2 back. But they got back to front running tactics last time, and he ran pretty well behind Chunk of Gold, who we saw come back to finish a good second at a big price in the Risen Star last week. But Shan was setting a pretty slow pace that day, and he's likely going to have to go much faster on the front end here.
The 3 is trained by John Robb Studley Do Right, who's been racing kind of all over the place, the Mid-Atlantic, New York as well, and most recently raced in the Jerome. We'll actually take a look at one of his performances, and we'll go back a little bit. We're going to go back to November 2nd, where this horse is able to win the Nashua and did it pretty nicely, seemed very comfortable early rating.
Yeah, when this horse is at his best, he stacks up with this field, as we saw here. Got a career best 86 buyer, which isn't far off the favorite in this race, First Resort. The top contenders in this field have earned buyers in the high 80s. The problem is Studley Do Right has been a little bit inconsistent. He's come back since this race and has disappointed a couple of times. Now he's trying the synthetic for the first time. If he runs here, he is cross-entered at Laurel in the Miracle Woods, so we'll see which race he ends up running in. But there is some pedigree. Nyquist is a 17% synth route sire, and the dam side, the dam was best on the turf. So there is some circus versatility in the pedigree. We'll see if he can handle it if he goes here.
The 4 is Calling Card. This one from Mike Maker, who started the career on the turf, made the switch to the dirt, and that was the graduation performance 3 starts back. And thought the race at Oaklawn, David, was okay, but obviously just never really made much of an impact in the Lecomte.
Yeah, he's one of the few horses that just seemed like they were spinning their wheels in the Lecomte. That was a race where the whole field kind of came together at the end, and it looked unimpressive at the time, but obviously we saw a couple of horses come back in the Risen Star last week to significantly improve their buyers. Obviously the winner, Magnitude, who I think was 6th in the Lecomte and came back to win, but also the second place finisher, Built, who came back to improve his buyer back up to a 92, finishing 3rd in the Risen Star. So maybe the Lecomte was a better race than people gave it credit for at the time. You go back to Calling Card's maiden victory victory at Aqueduct, where he beat New York Breds by 17 lengths with an 87 buyer that makes him highly competitive here. So there's talent in there. He's just trying the synthetic for the first time, but they started his career out on the turf, so they obviously had intentions to get him on a different surface at one point. So maybe this synthetic is going to work out for this horse. He's got some pedigree to handle it.
The 5 California Burrito. I'm curious to pick your brains on the Son of Army Mule, because I know last time out it looks flashy. He wins by 7.25. He gets a big figure, but they were crawling throughout. To me, it feels like no one really wanted the lead in the race. He kind of ended up on the lead and was much the best. Only one horse has come back to race. Nothing to rave home about. But it's the race 3 back that I actually really like for him. I know it was on the dirt, but he was second to Magnitude. And he's the type of horse that I feel like, in terms of trip, I wouldn't want to see what I saw in that first race at Turfway. I wouldn't want to see what I saw in the second. I'd like to see somewhere where he's maybe sitting 3rd or 4th early and makes one run.
Yeah, based purely on the last race, you might want to question the distance of this race a little bit because, as you said, he got things so easy for him on the front end, setting that slow pace and just sprinting home. But you go back to that Churchill race that you were highlighting where he was second to Magnitude and he got the mile and a 16th that day on the dirt. And typically it takes a little more stamina to go that distance on the dirt than it does turf or synthetic. So I think he fits going the distance. And what I'll say about his disappointing performance too back at Turfway is that I did not love the rider trip that day. He was getting shuffled back all the way around the far turn, was in position at the half-mile pole and just got completely shuffled out by the quarter pole, was actually running on at the end of that race. So there's no trouble noted in the comment line, but he had a tough trip there. And he showed what he could do last time, just not likely to get the same trip in this spot.
The 6 Banks is in this field for Joe Sharp. He was 7th in that prep race at Turfway Park last time out, but 2 starts back, got a pretty nice win where it just everything kind of went his way, and he ended up being much the best.
Yeah, he won that optional claiming race that I was referring to with California Burrito, where that rival did not get a great trip around the far turn. Banks, on the other hand, was able to loop the field, get the jump on that rival and all the others to win that race. Came back in the Leonidas last time and was pretty disappointing as the favorite. He tried to launch a rally around the far turn, just wasn't going anywhere. He's going to have to do a lot better than that to be competitive against this field.
The 7 Baby Max has really taken to the synthetic, or I should say the all-weather, in those last 2. Was able to win that stakes race that multiple horses exit out of, but 2 starts back, he was a little further back. The pace was hotter, and that's why he was able to close.
Yeah, I like all of this horse's races, and it feels like he's taken a step forward in each and every start. He's handled a variety of surfaces and distances, and I like the last race in the Leonidas, even though he got the jump on that rival Chunk of Gold, who was making a big late run, and as we said, came back to run so well in the Risen Star. But Baby Max won that race quite decisively. He's got a nice turn of foot on him. It seems like he handles the distance and can also make his own trip because we've seen him rally from way off the pace and also sit in a stalking position last time. So he's got the versatility you want to see.
The 8 King of Ashes up next. It looks like a developing son here of Street Sense. We'll take a look at one of his performances. Now, he's gotten better with each of his starts. In those last 2, they've been on the Tapeta at Gulfstream Park, and this was a very well-timed ride from Tyler Gaffleon, just kind of riding him all the way down the stretch to get up in the nick of time. Obviously, this is his best performance to date, and you just feel like he might be getting better.
Yeah, watching this horse run, he feels like he's a real grinder. He doesn't have a whole lot of turn of foot to him, but he's just able to stay on at one pace. And you can see there, the runner-up is trying to come back at it at the end, but he's able to hold on to his advantage through the wire. I mean, distance is obviously no problem for this horse. He finishes well. He's going to need some pace to close into, and he's the kind of horse that I wonder if down the line is going to want even more distance than this, because his dam was like a true marathoner. She won stakes going as far as 1.5 miles on the turf. So we'll see if he's able to get up going this distance.
The 9 First Resort, you mentioned this might be the horse that everyone has their eyes on. Obviously, has done very little wrong in the career. Now, the only out of the money finish was in the summer, but in terms of that race, I think the top 2 in there, they were the European Invaders. They were certainly the horses to beat, and by no means did he embarrass himself.
No, I watched that summer stakes back expecting to maybe not love his turf form as much as his dirt form, but he actually ran deceptively well in the summer because he was a little far back at the top of the stretch, tried to rally inside in a race where the top 2 came around the outside, around the turn, and he was really finishing at the end of that race looking like he was handling the turf just fine. So that's a good sign for him, having that versatility to run well on the dirt and the turf, with him now trying the synthetic for the first time. And obviously, he showed what he could do when he was at his best last time in the Kentucky Jockey Club. The pace of that race did suit him because he was sitting on top of some pretty slow to moderate fractions and sprinted home, but at least showed he could get the distance. And he's been training over this Turfway Park surface all through the winter, so he should be familiar with it by now.
I'm just curious too, around 2 turns. You talked about the turf race. We're talking about the EP Taylor up at Woodbine. That's just a 1 turn race. And that's why you see a little bit of a, in my opinion, fast fraction. So very interesting type trying the synthetic all weather. The 10 coming in hot. This one for John Edis. 2 for 2 now at Turfway Park in those races, but they're both sprints. And now it's a little bit of a question mark how he's going to translate to a 2 turn distance.
Yeah, he's obviously a horse that has improved a ton switching to the synthetic because he just was not this kind of stakes horse racing on dirt early in his career. And now he's 2 for 2 on the all weather. And I like both of the races. Just watching him run, he does look more like a sprinter to me. He's got that quicker, choppy action and just doesn't really give me the vibe of a horse that's going to appreciate stretching out in distance. But he does have some competitive speed figures.
In the 11, Burton's Baytown looks like a horse that at least has gotten better since the freshening. Had some time off between August and December. It's improved, and the last 3 has resulted in 2 wins. But obviously, lower competition. The stakes ranks are going to be very different for him.
Yeah, this horse just has a lot to overcome in this race. Just picked up the pieces to get the job done in a claiming race last time. This will be his first time on the synthetic. He would need a big step forward.
And then rounding out the main body of the field is the 12 Maximum Promise. This one for Kenny McPeak. Luan Machado has the mount. Decisive winner last year as a 2-year-old. And the only start so far was a muddy track. He's pretty far back, but was able to at least come running into the end and just miss 4th narrowly.
Yeah, we talked about the Lecomte earlier, maybe being a stronger race than the low buyer it received would suggest. I thought he got a pretty good trip, all things considered, than the Lecomte because he was saving ground from his inside post every step of the way, whereas the previous horse we talked about coming out of the Lecomte calling card, he was 3 to 4 wide around the turn. So I kind of preferred that one, but that was just the first start off a layoff for Maximum Promise. So maybe he can take a step forward here.
And then in an event of a scratch or 2, Special Caliber has post 13. The 14 is Maitre D. Both would be big upsets, I feel like, in this field, David. They have a lot to prove to this point.
They really do. We talked about the horse that Special Caliber just beat last time being tough to make in this race, and he was just picking up the pieces with a fast pace. So both of them would have to take a big step forward.
All right, top pick time here for the John Battaglia. Don't forget, this is the start of the late pick 4 this Saturday out at Turfway Park. And we use a lot of the same horses, a little bit of a different order. You're going to try to get a little bit creative here and try to beat First Resort with Calling Card, who we talked about the Lecomte. There are a couple horses that have run back, and they've run back well out of that race.
Yeah, I'm always a little skeptical of horses that are trying something new for the first time as favorites, which is the case for First Resort. But watching his races, he does kind of give you some confidence that he's going to be just fine over the synthetic surface. And he has shown a high level of ability in his career. So I do think he's the most likely winner. I just thought Calling Card could be the right kind of price in this race. And given the fact that he handled the turf and handled the dirt, I'm okay with him trying the synthetic here. And he does have that one big speed figure that makes him competitive with the favorite.
All right, 4975 for David, 91275 for me. It's the John Battaglia at Turfway Park this weekend. Good luck.